Welcome to the Venly Expert Talks, where we aim to inspire Web3 builders with great stories from great minds. I'm your host, Alexandra Ahrens, and I'd like to remind you that you can always reach out to us on Twitter, Discord, or LinkedIn with ideas for the podcast and questions for our guests. Welcome to episode 44 of the Venly Expert Talks. Today I'm joined by Dr. Mark van Rijmenam, an award-winning keynote speaker, 5-time author, and founder of the Digital Futures Institute. And we're going to be talking about the technology that will shape our future. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's great to be part of your show.
Great. Perfect. Then let's kind of go into it. You've got a lot going on. So if we can start from the beginning, tell me kind of what led you to where you are today.
Sure, that's a long story though. I've done a few different things, a few odd things, but at the moment I'm a strategic futurist, which means that I think about emerging technologies and how they change organizations and society. I've been doing this for over a decade. And my focus is really on, big data, blockchain, AI, the metaverse. How are these technologies evolving? What's the impact of these technologies, and how can organizations benefit from these technologies? So I very much believe in practice what you preach. So I don't only talk about this stuff; I also try to do this stuff. So I'm also known as the digital speaker because when the pandemic hit, I couldn't obviously do my talks in person anymore. So I created the digital speaker brand, which allowed me to do keynotes as a hologram, but also I created an avatar way before the metaverse was a hit to deliver keynotes as an avatar. I delivered the world's first VR talk for TEDx in 2020, which was very, very interesting. I'm currently building a digital twin of myself, and I have just written my 5th book completely with AI, again, as an experiment to understand how these technologies are working and are evolving. It's very much, I try to understand, what do these technologies do? How do they affect our business? What can we learn from them? How can we benefit from them? And more importantly, also, how can we use them responsibly?
Awesome. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit further on those kinds of strategies and approaches that you would recommend for businesses?
Sure. So the way I look at technologies, digital technologies, is that they are a tool. It's a neutral tool, and we need to understand how we can benefit from these tools. And I think a lot of organizations find it difficult to change. They find it difficult to embrace digital transformation at all levels of the organization. And my approach is really to help organizations achieve that by, on the one hand, advocating that we need to change the entire organization at all levels of the business. People need to understand what these digital technologies mean for from their perspective and for their role. Because I believe that if you teach all employees in the organization, whether it's 1,000 employees or 250,000 employees, you get the chance to truly change your business. Every organization should embrace these technologies because, it's going to happen whether we want it or not. It's not that we can say, I don't want the metaverse to happen because I think it's stupid, or I don't want crypto to happen because I think it's criminal. That's just simply doesn't work because, the technologies are evolving and we'll have to adapt them and we'll have to embrace them whether we want it or not. And I think that's the crucial part here. And I think, any organization needs to start embracing these technologies to ensure that they can benefit from these technologies in the long run. That's the second thing that I always tell organizations. We should have a more long-term perspective, a more long-term approach, a long-term stakeholder approach instead of a short-term shareholder approach, especially with digital technologies, because they take a long time to evolve and they have an impact on the long run as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what's so interesting that you say you've been doing this for a decade already. Have you seen a lot of changes already coming into effect then since you began this work?
Oh yeah, 100%. It all started with big data. I've written 5 books, and my first book was published in 2014 called Think Bigger. And back then I thought, well, big data is going to be it. It's going to be hot. And I sort of thought, well, it's going to be 2-3 years, and then the whole world will do big data. Well, obviously that didn't really happen. And over time this has evolved. I moved from big data to blockchain when I was doing my PhD. I incorporated AI, and obviously recently the metaverse. So technology is constantly evolving, and it's my objective and my what I try to achieve is to sort of look into the future to see what can we expect next. What's going to happen in the next decade? What's going to happen in the next 15, 20 years? And how are these technologies going to impact our lives? But it's also, I think, very important to see that I can be wrong as well, because technology often comes a lot faster than I anticipated. And I think the best example is what we've seen in the past 4 months. The entire buzz and hype and the developments around generative AI or synthetic media, more particularly ChatGPT. What has happened in such a short time frame, nobody foresaw coming. And I think that is that's also something important to be aware of. That technology, it can evolve, often really, really quickly, and have a massive change that you might not have seen, might not have foreseen.
Yeah, definitely. And we're going to dive into a lot of those things here in this talk, especially some of the effects and what's happening with all of it. So starting out, actually, I kind of want to go through a couple of the topics that you talk about in your most recent book. So starting out with the metaverse. A lot of people have very differing opinions on what the metaverse even is and what it means. Can we start there? What does it mean to you?
Sure. So the metaverse for my fourth book actually was Step into the Metaverse. I did about 100 in-depth interviews with the stakeholders who are building the metaverse, and I did another almost 150 surveys, very long surveys. And I got almost 250 different definitions of what the metaverse is, which sort of clearly shows that the metaverse, it's a very abstract concept. It's very difficult to grasp for a lot of people. And so, to me, what I derive from all these interviews, what the metaverse is to me is it's where the physical and the digital worlds are converging. So where the physical moves into the digital and the digital moves into the physical. So if we look at from the physical moving into the digital, that's basically what we are doing. You are in Germany, I am in Sydney, Australia, and we are connecting through the digital realm in real time, having this conversation about future technologies. To me, that is part of sort of the very, very early phases of the metaverse. I wouldn't say it's the metaverse, because the metaverse to me is also a 3D immersive internet, and where we move from a 2D to a 3D internet, and what we're doing at the moment is 2D internet. And so you can also say, as part of the physical moving into the digital, is where digital twins come in. Where we create exact digital replicas of physical assets, so that we can interact with those physical assets in the digital world. And we can either, there are different levels, so we can monitor what's going on, or we can interact and influence the physical assets from the digital world. So that's one part. The other part is where the digital moves into the physical. And I think this is going to be a much bigger part for the metaverse than the other one, because it allows us to basically add near infinite layers on top of the physical world, and explore and experience this augmented reality across the globe, basically. And I think it allows us to improve our physical experience in ways that has never been possible. Now, of course, virtual reality and augmented reality are channels to interact with this immersive internet. The same as the desktop or your iPad or smartphone is a channel to interact with the 2D internet. Over time, 10, 15 years, those 2D devices will likely disappear, because a sleek augmented reality glasses or VR glasses or VR headset is a lot more useful than having to carry a desktop computer with you. But that's far into the future. But so very much the convergence of the physical and the digital, where you create sort of a phygital experience, which is a horrible word. Luckily, I didn't coin it. But that's sort of where I foresee where this next iteration of the internet will be. And I think what's important, we'll move from having to make a conscious decision to go on the internet to be actively involved in the internet, to be part of in the internet, where the internet is as pervasive as the air we breathe or the energy we consume.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So most of the uses that we're seeing right now for the metaverse, in my opinion, from what I've seen, I guess, is things like gaming and entertainment, or hosting talks and things like that. Are there any other uses or industries that you can think of that would really benefit from the metaverse within just the next few years?
Sure. Well, I think, that's one of the misconceptions that we see at the moment, that people think the metaverse equals gaming, or the metaverse equals virtual reality, or the metaverse equals Web3 for that matter. I don't think it's any of the above individually, but it can be all of the above, I think what's important for brands to understand is that we are moving to the next iteration of the internet, where we had the first, the very static internet, at the start of this millennium. Then we moved to the mobile internet when the iPhone was launched. Then we moved to the social internet towards the 2010s, with all the social media platforms. And now we're moving to the next iteration, the immersive internet. So by the fact that we're moving from 2D to 3D, and 3D being a lot more intuitive, a lot more seamless to us humans, because we are made for 3D, we're not made for 2D, it will have an effect on all industries. And of course, some industries will see a bigger impact than other industries. The fishing industry might see less of an impact at short notice than, let's say, the retail industry or the luxury industry. But in the end, I think all industries will experience this. What we see happening today already is that, of course, the luxury industry, the fashion industry is really exploring the metaverse, using the NFTs with digital fashion to create a novel experience. But I think in the end, every industry can benefit, and should benefit from this immersive internet.
Yeah, very well put. You kind of touched on there for a second, kind of the retail aspect. How do you think the emergence of the metaverse will change the way businesses operate and interact with their customers? Do you have any visuals lined up for that?
Yeah, sure. I think what I foresee happening when it's specifically retail sector is we'll move from e-commerce to what I call I-commerce, immersive commerce. Where we use either have direct to avatar purchases, where we buy stuff for our avatars. So these are purely digital products that we buy with crypto for our avatars, and of course it's then these hopefully in an open metaverse, because that's what I am try to push very much, because I think that's better than a closed metaverse. These digital fashion items are like NFTs, non-fungible tokens, so that you can take them from one experience to another. Then you have the digital to physical part, where you can buy a product in a digital world, in a 3D immersive world, as a physical item to be delivered to your house. Now, this can be, for example, that you decides to buy some clothing, and you want to see how that jacket looks on you, on your avatar, in 3D. And you can see the flowing of the fabric. You can see how the jacket looks on your body with your dimensions. So you have a very good understanding which size of the jacket and how the jacket looks like before you buy it. That's one thing. At the same time, if you buy that physical jacket, you can also maybe get a digital jacket for your avatar, so that you and your avatar can wear the same thing. That's one part of e-commerce. You can also see that you have like so-called magic mirrors in physical stores, where you can stand in front of a mirror and you can just swap clothing as you stand there, which especially in China are already happening quite a lot. Mm-hmm. I think all of these are a way to have a better experience, to better understand which clothing you want to wear, and will also have a dramatic impact on sustainability, because all those clothes, instead of requesting 3 sizes, you only have to request 1 size, and normally if you request 3 sizes, 2 of those sizes you return end up in landfill, and now at least you only order hopefully 1 size, so that fewer clothes will end up in landfill.
Okay, that all sounds very positive. So at this point, do you see any potential challenges or drawbacks to this kind of metaverse or e-commerce situation?
Well, I don't see necessarily drawbacks to e-commerce. I see a lot of drawbacks to the metaverse because there are a lot of dangers lurking in the corners of the metaverse, as I'd like to say. Because as we move from a 2D to 3D internet, all the problems that we have with today's internet will be extrapolated in the next iteration of the internet. So we'll have more polarization, we'll have more harassment, we'll have more bots and trolls, we'll have more privacy issues, we'll have more health issues, we'll have more misinformation, we'll have etc. So we all the problems that we have today will be extrapolated in the metaverse, and I think that's very, very problematic. And we really need to think carefully about how to go about that. Because with the current internet, we sort of sleepwalked into all these fantastic possibilities. Never really thought about the consequences. Never really thought, privacy became an afterthought. Security became an afterthought. And in the metaverse, we'll create 100 times more data than we do today. So we should not make this an afterthought again. We have to think carefully. And so far, there's been it doesn't go into the right direction, and that worries me a lot because if we want to build a digital society that's useful, we have to think about the consequences. We have to think about the governance. We have to think about what do we allow, what we don't allow, and we also have to think about the unintended consequences which might come about.
Mm-hmm. So this is kind of one of those topics that I said we might touch on a couple times. So who do you think is responsible for that? Is that government's job, or is that the builder's job, or a mixture, or how do you see it?
That's a good question. I think it's a combination. So governments, they need to step up their game. They need to create a regulation that doesn't stifle innovation, that allows for innovation, but also protects the consumer and protects the consumer against big tech. It's also the builders, the startups, the scale-ups who are building these technology. Often these startups, they build fantastic technology, but not necessarily think about the consequences of whatever they're building because they're just busy building their stuff. They have their investors at their back asking for exits, so they build without necessarily thinking about the consequences and the unintended consequences of whatever they're building. So that's a problem. Then we have the enterprise organizations who are applying these technologies in their businesses. They need to do that in the right way, and they need to embrace data technology in the right way from a security perspective, from a privacy perspective. And the amount of data breaches that we have seen in the past decades is just scary, and it will only increase. Mm-hmm. So we need to educate the enterprise organizations as well. And finally, I think there's also a responsibility for you and me, the general public. We need to understand what's going on here. We need to understand how to behave in this digital world. And we might be digitally native. We might be able to understand how to use a computer or a smartphone or a VR headset. But that doesn't mean we're digitally literate. It doesn't mean that we understand how to behave in this digital world. And that we cannot say and do everything in the digital world that we also can't do in the real world, and I think that's a very, very important responsibility also for the consumer, that you and I, we understand what we get into, that we understand how to behave. If you go to China and you don't speak Mandarin, it's a lot more difficult to move around than if you would speak Mandarin. So if you want to move around in the metaverse, you need to understand the language of the metaverse, of this digital world, because it allows you to better move around. So there's a very important responsibility for the general public, and the education of governments, of startups, of enterprise organizations, of the general public is exactly what we're focusing on with the research institute that I founded.
Perfect. Let's move into AI. We're on a deadline here, and I want to make sure we touch on some different things. So with AI, you already mentioned ChatGPT, how you used it to help co-write your 5th book here within a week. So how will AI continue to affect the pacing and the quality of information? And actually, let's start there.
Well, I think what we see happening at the moment is that AI is developing at a breakneck speed, it's going so fast. I wrote an article in September, I believe, on synthetic media, and 2 months later, it was already pretty much outdated because, with all the new technologies that came about. At the moment, you can create text with, or code with simple inputs. You can create videos with simple inputs. You can create images with simple inputs. You can create entire virtual worlds with simple inputs, 3D assets with inputs. So it's crazy how fast this is going. Is this the Holy Grail? No, definitely not. What I've experienced with writing my book, it was written by ChatGPT, it was edited by Grammarly, and it was designed by Stable Diffusion. I sort of supervised the whole thing. I asked the questions, and I placed everything in the right order. I didn't write a word myself. It was all done in that direction. But is it? To be honest, it's a very interesting experiment. It's an interesting book. Is it a very high quality book, as high quality as my other books? No, it's not. It's quite superficial. It doesn't go really in depth. It sort of flows in between, small brackets. While other books, you have more storylines, you have more peaks, more truths, and you have a more interesting story. And I don't think that ChatGPT offers that at the moment. Apart from the fact that it just talks nonsense at times. At some point I asked it, tell me how robotics and AI converged. And it just plainly stated that in the 1980s, robotics and AI created self-driving cars that completely transformed the transportation industry, which I think is quite fascinating. Earlier today, I asked ChatGPT a question about myself, and because I'm pretty visible online, and I said, tell me which articles did I write? And I just mentioned 3 articles that is complete nonsense, that I didn't write, that don't even exist, that are very similar, and it just changed one technology for the other. So there's a lot of mistakes here. However, at the same time, it also offers it's a fantastic tool to spur creativity. That if you have a writer's block, to ask a question and get an answer, or if you have a coder's block, to ask a question, or if you're stuck somewhere, from that perspective, I think it's really, really interesting because it can help us be more creative. Of course, this might all change 3-4 months from now when GPT-4 will be launched, which might be a whole different level. But at the moment, it's not the Holy Grail. It's fantastic technology. It definitely has mistakes, and it has bugs. In the end, technology is neutral, so we need to think carefully about how to use this technology. But it's a tool. And we should be careful with any advanced tool. You should be careful of how to use this. And this is an advanced tool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's good. I like how you've put that. I guess being on the internet, you've definitely seen there are some people, and oddly enough, specifically like teachers and professors are very concerned about ChatGPT specifically. And, the effects on writing homework and blog and essays and things. So how do you see that downside, and what other kind of potential downsides do you think we need to look out for in terms of AI in general?
Well, I think one thing here is, people are always afraid of change. And when Wikipedia was launched first, everyone thought it was a scam. You could never quote from Wikipedia. You should always quote from academic articles or trusted sources. And now often, Wikipedia is more reliable than the best encyclopedias. It doesn't mean you still need to do your own research, but it sort of shows you Wikipedia is a great source, great tool in order to use for whatever you're trying to do. Now, over time, we have learned how to deal with that. We have learned to understand how can we use Wikipedia and where can we trust Wikipedia and where can we not trust Wikipedia. We have learned that we should do our own research, and we have learned that we have to be skeptical, etc. And we have developed analytical skills to understand how to go about all this new technology. Now, the same thing I think will apply with ChatGPT or any of the next developments that will undoubtedly come in the next decade. They're not going to go away, and if the tool is out there, people will start to use these technologies. Now we can start to forbid this. And you see this already happening, that ChatGPT is building watermarks into the text that they're created, so that at least people can see that it was created by an AI. I think that's a very, very good idea, because if we can't understand anymore whether something is written by AI or created by AI versus being created by humans, I think that's a bad thing. But that's a good thing. So that those tools to understand those watermarks, to understand if something is written by an AI or not, will probably end up in the hands of the teacher so that they can understand what's going on here. At the same time, also the teachers need to understand that their world is changing as well, and that these new technologies are out there for the use of, also for the betterment of society. So that we should also we should teach the children how to use these technologies in a responsible way. And often, nobody's teaching our children how to use all these different technologies that are out there, how to use them in a responsible way. And I think that's far more problematic than saying that ChatGPT will ruin homework. Maybe yes, at a short notice, at a short term, that's very, very well possible, and we need to understand rapidly how to go about that. But we should also try to look from the other perspective. Children will use this, students will use this, and how can we ensure that their use is done in a responsible way that actually benefits them? Because anyway, if you answer a test using ChatGPT, you don't learn anything anyway. So that doesn't really work. So we need to think carefully about how the educational sector can use these tools instead of purely forbidding them, because that's not going to happen anyway.
Yeah, very good. That makes sense. Kind of going back to the governmental or legality side here. So there was recently a decision in the US, and I'm sure they're working on other things like it in other places, that works that were created completely from AI cannot be copyrighted. So in your opinion, what does that mean for the legal side of artistic and creation of art and literature?
It's a very interesting perspective, because yes, if I use Midjourney to create new art, this is based on existing art, and most likely breaches copyright issues, so therefore it cannot be copyrighted. However, if I'm a developer and I create a tool to an AI that allows to come up to be creative, and this might not happen, in the next decade or so, but to actually be creative, because ChatGPT is not creative, Stable Diffusion or Midjourney, they're not creative. They just looking at what's out there in text or images, and they use that to, if a given word A, it's likely that word B will follow in this context. That's basically in a very, 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 very brief nutshell how it works, and that's not creativity. It's pretty darn smart that how they've created these tools, but it's not. That's not creativity. Now, this might change in the future, where developers actually create an AI that is creative, and then we of course have to have a discussion of what is creativity and what defines being creative. But that's more a philosophical question. But if that's the case, then why can't that AI hold the copyright of what has been created, or should that copyright be given to the one who developed it? But then if it's a company, does the company get the copyright? Or if it's 10 developers, who of those 10 developers get the copyright? So these are all important questions that we need to ask. So if it's a ChatGPT tool, can it have copyright? Maybe not, because it's not necessarily. Sorry, it's not necessarily creative, and it uses a lot of existing content to create new content. But down the line, if we have something that's truly creative, why can't it hold copyright? I think that's something that we need to discuss. And I would not necessarily rule out immediately that AI can't hold a copyright, because what if that AI creates a child AI, which then creates the and then you quickly go into a rabbit hole, that's something that we need to discuss as a society. How do we look at this? And because work also needs to be rewarded. If you are as a developer create something really really creative in the future, then that should be rewarded as well. So ruling out that any AI can never hold copyright, I think is not a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. So we kind of touched on this already, but with embracing AI or staying more skeptical, what do you think are kind of the main fears at this point, especially from artists, I would say in particular, because we saw, that AI generated piece win an art competition and set the internet on fire. But yeah, so what would you say are the kind of the main fears surrounding this, and how can we kind of quell those fears at this point?
Well, I think the fears around AI are real, as in, AI will take over jobs. That's, in my opinion, a given. Self-driving cars will put a lot of people out of a job. And not necessarily next 3 years, but next 10 to 20 years, self-driving cars will put a lot of people out of a job. And in a lot of fields, AI will become really, really advanced, and it will, on the one hand, augment a lot of work, but it will also makes work a lot more effective and efficient, so that you can do the same work with fewer employees. And we see this already happening today, because in a lot of countries there's a shortage in finding the right staff. So what do companies do? Being capitalist as they are looking for other solutions to replace those staff that they cannot find. Now, once technology has taken the place of an employee, that job for that employee will never come back. So over time, more technology will take the place of more people, and that is a real problem for us as a society. How do we go about that? Do we need to have a basic income? Maybe. I haven't done my research is not in that direction, but these are things that we need to think about, because not thinking about the consequences of AI and how it will affect our society, I think is very dangerous. Do these people have to do different jobs? What kind of jobs? A lot of the jobs that will become available, because of course AI will also create a lot of new jobs, are more require maybe a master's degree or a bachelor's degree or maybe even a PhD. And obviously not everyone will have a master or a degree or a PhD. So how do we go about that? I don't necessarily have an answer here, but this is something that we need to think hard about, very, very quickly. And we need to come up with solutions, because if we just let the technology evolve, we'll be sleepwalking into a future where AI has taken over a lot of jobs, and there will be a lot of people without a job. And that, how do we take care of these people? I don't have an answer there, but it's something that we need to think about really, really hard.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Good. At this point, I'd like to kind of zoom back out. There's a lot more topics in your book that I found interesting relating to climate tech and 3D printing, but I want to kind of zoom out again. So as someone who does have a PhD in management and an expertise in big data and blockchain and AI and all of this, how do you think these future techs will shape the way organizations operate in the future? So we did talk on AI. So again, kind of the bigger picture, I guess.
Sure. So, well, I think what we can foresee is that, technology is evolving fast, and it's moving exponential, because all the different technologies are converging. So better AI means we need we create more data. New tools means also more data, which means we can create better AI, which at some point means that we can get quantum computing, which creates even better algorithms, better AI, which can create better tools, etc. And so all these technologies are converging. We have left sort of the hockey stick and are now on an exponential trajectory to a very exciting future, with also some caveats. And from an organizational perspective, that means that everything in your business will change. How you find customers, how you deal with customers, how you sell to customers, how you find employees, how you hire employees, how you deal with your employees, how you build products, how you source products, how you supply products. Every aspect of your business will change in the next 2 to 3 decades, in more ways than they have changed in the past 2 to 3 decades. And so, businesses will experience constant change. And now that's problematic, because people don't like change. I think it's sort of in our genes that we don't like change. But we are living in a world that's constant in flux, and so we need to understand how to deal with that change. We need to embrace that change in order to benefit from it. And I think that is very very challenging. Because if you want to embrace change, you need to understand the change. You need to understand how these technologies are affecting your business. That's quite challenging, because the world is changing so fast at the moment that even for me, where it's my work, my job, to understand how these technologies change organizations, even for me, it's sometimes difficult to keep up. Now, it's my job. If it's not your job, if you are a CEO of a large business, you have many other things on your plate, and thinking about how digital technology is going to disrupt your business is very low on your agenda. Probably it shouldn't be, but that's probably where it is. And so that's, I think, very important for organizations to be aware of. That the world is changing so rapidly at the moment, and if you don't think about that, if you don't prepare for that, it will mean the end of your business in maybe before the end of this decade. No matter how big you are, and we have seen plenty of examples in the past that no business is too big to fail, and that's something to think about. And so any organization should prepare for tomorrow, and be ready for tomorrow.
Yeah. How do you see the differences in kind of reactions or what the challenges are, what the benefits are between companies that are very, very small, maybe even a startup, versus one that has 100 employees or 1,000, or as you mentioned before, 250,000 employees? Is it a very similar situation, or what are the unique challenges, I guess?
Well, of course, a startup is a lot more agile and can change a lot faster. A 250,000 employee enterprise organization is like a big tanker, which is a lot more difficult to navigate and to change course. So that's one thing. But I think it also very much depends on the people who you have in your business and how open-minded they are. The other day I was delivering a keynote, and one of the gentleman in the audience said, "Yeah, I don't believe crypto. I don't believe blockchain, and crypto is a scam." And we had a bit of a brief discussion about that. And then I, politely had to disagree with the gentleman because it's just it's a very I think a very old-fashioned way to look at the world. It's as if you can stop the technological developments that are going on at the moment. The future is happening whether we want it or not. It's not that we can stop this train. It's not that you can say, okay, we're going to forbid all developments in crypto because crypto is a scam. That's simply not going to happen. The same is, we can't say we're going to forbid all AI developments because it's going to ruin all our jobs. That's not going to happen because you simply can't do that. All these developments are going to happen whether we want it or not, and we can, ignore them and try to hold on to the past. But the past has also shown that those people, societies, organizations that do that generally don't go very well in the future. Again, you have to adapt. You have to accept change. You have to go with the flow, understand these technologies and embrace them. Whether you're a small organization, a governmental organization, or a large enterprise business.
Yeah, good. So with Web3 and blockchain, as you were kind of specifically mentioning there, how do you see the differences in how Web3 and blockchain is going to shape the future of industries that are maybe not so related to gaming and entertainment as we discussed before with the metaverse, but more finance, industrial, and healthcare and supply chain management, that sort of thing?
So I think if we look at Web3, Web3 is a very important development. But Web3 is also very so-called boring development, I think, because in the end, Web3 is infrastructure. That's how I look at it. Web3 is building the infrastructure of the next iteration of the internet, of an internet that's open and that's decentralized and not controlled by centralized entities. The whole next iteration of the internet, the whole immersive internet, the metaverse, is not required for large is not required to build the open metaverse to build the metaverse, and we can very well do without Web3 technologies to build the metaverse. And that's, I think, a challenge because we need to have a more decentralized metaverse than we have than the internet we have today, and that's where Web3 technologies come into place. And so, any organization that wants to benefit from a more decentralized, more open, and these are all paradigms that, especially Generation Z and Generation Alpha, embrace. They should look into how they can benefit from Web3 technologies.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Well, then kind of my last really big question here. What are you most excited about when it comes to all this new tech and its adoption?
So it's an interesting question, it's basically looking into the future and what's happening. And I think what I'm most excited about when I look into the future is all the enormous possibilities that these technologies offer to create a better society and to create a better life for billions of people if we use these technologies in the right way, and to really create a thriving digital society that can benefit everyone. And we are able to create magical things if we use these technologies in the right way. That's what I'm very, very excited about. And we can already see the first glimpses, of how technology offer really cool experiences. But we also see the downside of this. And that's something that I really worry about. The verdict is still out whether it will end up in a society which embraces predominantly the good side versus predominantly the bad side. If we look at the history of the internet so far, yes, it has created fantastic things for society, but it also has created enormous problems. It has resulted in many people dying of all kinds of causes, if this is going to move to a level up, which it will, then we need to make sure that we do it in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. All right. Then, do you have anything specific you want to plug? I guess your latest book at the very least.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to, if people want to find me, they can find me on the digitalspeaker.com. So last year in 2022, I published 2 books. One very well in-depth research, interviews, surveys, everything called Step into the Metaverse and how the Metaverse is going to change our society. And then the other book called Future Visions, written in 5 days, edited in 1 day and published in 1 day, completely done with AI. And I think it's interesting to see these 2 books side by side and to get a good understanding of how technology is evolving and what the limitations are of these technologies, because I think that's very important to be aware of as well.
And then the very last question we like to ask people: who should we have on the Expert Talks next?
There's so many people. It depends on which direction you want to focus on. If it's more into the metaverse, I would definitely recommend Justin Hochberg. He's very much focused on the metaverse. If in terms of AI, I would definitely look into everyone who's building generative AI. because there's so much happening in this space. There's so many people who are very, very interesting to invite, because so many really interesting people build so many really cool things. I'm sure you can have dozens and dozens of more podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. Perfect. All right. Thank you so very much for your time today, Mark. I really appreciated our conversation, and I look forward to seeing what you've got going on in the future.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's been a great conversation.
If you like today's episode, please rate, follow, or subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you really like our content, join our Discord community, where there's always good conversation, exciting news, and live AMAs. Thanks for listening.